Welcome back to the latest episode of the Key and Mang audio experience. I'm your host, Mang, as always, joined by my fellow co-host, Key. Key, what's good?
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm good, can't complain. Today we got another special one. We got the founder of TJL Training, co-founder of Master Hoops, based out of Lowell, Mass, Tyler Leclerc. Tyler, what's good?
What up? How's it going?
I'm good, can't complain. Appreciate you coming on the pod.
Of course. Appreciate you guys having me.
Of course. So for people who don't know who you are, could you give us a brief intro? I kind of intro to some of your platforms, but a brief intro into who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I am a private skills trainer, player development coach, whatever you guys want to call it. Also, I own my own gym out in Lowell. So I do that. That's pretty much takes up all my time. And then me and Coleman are co-founders of Master Hoops, like you said, which is a coach education platform. So really interested in the player development. I've been doing this for about, I think, 5 years, somewhere around there. And then I've also slowly started to build a passion for the things that I have learned and being able to pass that on to other coaches just to continue to help them on both the actual training side and the business side as well.
Can you kind of take us back through what younger Tyler was like? Because I think we read something where you started out in like high school, like training players, and it kind of just got going. You got the opportunity to play college ball, and then you were like, I want to train.
Yeah.
Like, what was that kind of transition like?
So I really started to fall in love with basketball and just training and getting better when I was in like 8th grade. That's kind of when it really started. And then all through high school, I just was solely focused on basketball every single day, work out 2, 3 times a day. And I just fell in love with the process of actually working out and getting better to the point where I actually liked that more than I actually liked playing the game. And then from there, I transitioned to starting to work with one of my buddies who lived down the street. I would start taking him to the gym, lifting with him, showing him what to do. And then that kind of transitioned to on the court as well. Hey, let me show you a couple moves. You can work out with me. That was my junior year of high school. And then that slowly transitioned to that summer going to my senior year of high school where I'd kind of start training him almost just completely separate from him working out for me. And then that's where the kind of love for training and helping other people started to come in. And then after my senior year, I started actually training and charging people. And at that time, it just felt completely weird. I was like, holy shit, like I can get paid to train somebody and do what I love to do. Like it just felt like robbery to me almost because I was like, holy shit, I enjoy this so much and I'm getting money. But yeah, that's kind of where like the love for training and helping people kind of started. Like you said, I started training basically like my junior year of high school and then really started to pick it up once I graduated high school. And like you said, I got a chance to play in college for a year. Didn't really enjoy the actual playing. I just loved the training. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to stop playing. I'm going to pick up training full time and just go full head of steam at that.
Was that a hard decision to make?
Say that again?
Was that a hard decision to make to transition from playing college hoops to training?
For me, no, it was honestly pretty easy. And everyone keeps asking like, oh, do you regret it? Do you wish you could still play? Honestly, no. Like I like this way more.
Why did you stop liking playing basketball? Like, what made you fall in love with the training instead of playing?
So I think I started falling in love more with the training like my senior year of high school, but then really in college, college is obviously so different from playing in high school. College is so much more like a job. Like from the second you step on campus to the second you leave campus for the summer, it's like a full-time job. You have pickup, you have lifts, you have team meetings, and you have practice from October all the way till March. So it's like at that point I was like, this is literally just a job for me, and I don't even enjoy it. So it's like I'm getting nothing out of it. And at that point I was just like, I would rather train and make money than continue to do this for 4 years.
How would you say your training philosophy has changed since when you first started to now?
Yeah, I think that's obviously had a huge jump just because when I was first starting out, I took like the player's approach and just did what I did as a player, and kind of apply that to the people that I was training. But obviously that doesn't work. And at first I was like, you know what, let's just work really hard. And then over time, my philosophy has been, how can we work smarter? How can everything that we do get us as much improvement as possible, right? The best time, opportunity, trade-off, whatever. Um, and really just like starting to dive into the science and like, why does this work? Why doesn't this work? How can I start speaking to my players better? So I started really like looking at all the fine details of training, like how to communicate better, the business side of it, the drill structure, how to kind of accommodate for different players. So it really kind of just came from like, at first I was very broad. I was just kind of doing what I have always done, what I've been taught, and then slowly over time kind of diving into the skill acquisition science, and then just diving into the best methods of literally every part of training, and then trying to apply that to the best of my ability.
What's the thing you feel like, I know you've talked about the evolution of your training philosophy and how you just kind of dive deeper into the communication aspect and working smarter. But what's the thing now that you're trying to improve on as a trainer?
I'd say for me, communication is definitely a big piece. Just the way that I speak, my tone, my pitch, connecting with players, that's always like a really, really big thing. I think the easier that you can connect with your players and the more that you can kind of see exactly what they need and say the right things at the right time, you're going to be able to get more out of your players. So I think that's just a really big piece for me. Obviously, the skill acquisition side and like fine tuning my drills and the way that I apply them, the constraints, all that kind of stuff. So always trying to work on that. But I think the big thing for me is just constant theme has just been improving my communication.
How are you trying to, like, what resources are you using to try and improve your communication? I think that's a huge thing.
Yeah, I was actually thinking of that the other day because I was like trying to think of a video from Mastery Hoops. So be like, yo, here's some like ways that I improve my communication. A couple of them is just like obviously books. There's a really good one, Language of Coaching. If you're a coach of any kind, I think that is an absolute must read. And then another thing that I've done over time is I would actually read out loud to myself, and I would try to work on just my articulation of the words, my tone, all that kind of stuff. Because for me, like, especially when I was younger and like I was never a really social person. I'm not an outgoing person. I'm not a person who loves to just talk to everybody. So especially when I started, like I was just not a good communicator at all. So over time, I'm just slowly trying to get better at that. Things like jumping on podcasts is a great way to do it. And I think the best way that I've improved my communication is by all the videos that I've made. So it's like when you film a video of yourself talking, A, you have to be really good at explaining it. B, when you go and watch it back, you realize how many times you stutter, say so and all this kind of stuff. And then like it's just almost like deliberate practice. Like you do it, you watch it, you review it. It's like watching film study on yourself, just for how you communicate. So I think that's easily one of the best ways. Even if you're not posting it, film yourself talking about a certain topic and then watch it back and then try to do it better and better and better and better.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. With the communication aspect, do you find that you kind of have to, I know you have to do this, but do you find that there's a certain communication style that resonates more with certain players?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of fitting how you communicate with their personality. Because some people kind of like to figure things out for themselves. Some people are more visual learners. Some people like to like hear you explain it. So I think for some players it's less talking, for some it's more. It kind of all depends. Like it's kind of just like reading the person that's in front of you and trying to do the best that you can. And almost sometimes just asking them like, yo, am I talking too much? Should I shut up? Or do you want me to explain this more? Do you want me to explain this again? And then off of that, you can kind of feel, okay, should I communicate more? Should I communicate less? I think another big piece is just like using analogies and things like that. So not trying to be over like critical, I guess you could say, with how you're communicating, like all the nitty-gritty details. The biggest thing that I try to do is just use a shit ton of analogies. And I think that's what helps stick with so many players so much better, is just they can pick up on the analogy like, oh, that's what you mean, as opposed to like trying to be so analytical with how you communicate.
Do you find that it's hard to accommodate for all the different styles of communication when you're doing a group coaching session?
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the big things for that is like being able to pull each player aside. So like, okay, you address the group at large, but then as the drill is progressing or as the drill is going on, like being able to go and communicate to each player in the style that they kind of receive that information. So say a person's a visual learner, if they're not picking something up, I'll be like, hey, watch this. Or if a person wants me to explain something more, I'll take them aside and I'll explain it more, or I'll give them an analogy or something like that. So that's kind of the easiest way within a group. Like if people learn differently or pick things up at different speeds. It's just being able to pull them aside and kind of have a one-on-one conversation within the actual group itself.
Is that one of the best parts for you when a player finally gets something that you've been trying to teach?
Oh, definitely, yeah. And I think a lot of times, like, every player has a different point, like, so it's like trying a lot of different shit sometimes. So it's like, okay, player's not getting it with this. I'm not going to keep saying or showing them the same thing. I have to change how I'm kind of presenting that information to them. And then once they get it, you're like, okay, that's how they start to pick things up. I'm going to keep presenting information in that same manner.
And how do you keep yourself in check? Because it seems like you got a lot of like, you've tried a lot of trial and error as you've come through the years, but how do you make sure that you're still progressing in the way you want to progress and not stay stagnant with some of the success that you have had recently?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think for me, just I'm always just trying to improve. I know I'm nowhere near where I will be in the future. So it's like, in terms of my sessions, is like, okay, I'll sit back and analyze, how was that session run? How could I have organized it better? Why was the energy off? And like all these. So I think the biggest thing is just like I was saying with the communication, is just being reflective on what you're doing. Like if you're just going through sessions and you're not analyzing, hey, like how was that session? Why was it good? Why was it bad? How can I change it? How are my drills? All that kind of stuff. You're never going to improve, right? If you just do something over and over, you're not going to improve unless you actually like break it down, analyze it, and see where you can improve. So for me, in terms of my sessions, I'm always doing that. In terms of my communication, I'm always doing that. And then I also try to go into, I think I talked about this in a YouTube or Master Hoops video, is like we always go into sessions with a goal for the player. But I try to always go into a session, sometimes I don't, but I always try to go into a session with a goal for myself as the coach. Like this session, I'm trying to really do a good job of communication, or this session, I'm trying to really do a good job with building the relationships. So like I always have a goal myself as well. Obviously, I'm going into the session trying to improve the players, but I'm going into that session trying to improve myself as a coach too.
So when you're trying to track the progress of yourself or your players, how do you track the progress to know that you're heading in the right direction?
Me or the player.
Both.
I mean, it's basketball is a really tough thing to quantify or kind of measure, just because you have to get stats in the game, but then even those aren't always true because there's so many different variables. So like A, it's kind of a feel thing. B, you can really see it as a coach or trainer. Okay, if we're in this situation or we're working on this certain drill, you can really see like the improvement. If you were to try to track improvement based on say like made shots in a workout, that's not a very good indicator, because again, that's not the actual environment that they're going to be playing in. So a player can go from making 50 out of 100 shots and then go to make 60 out of 100. But is that actual true improvement? Because true improvement is transferring over to a game. So the player can kind of feel like, hey, I'm making decisions better. I'm seeing the court better. I feel more confident dribbling the ball. I seem to be making more shots in the game. And obviously the stats help. But again, that's a very tough thing to quantify. And then for me, again, it's kind of a feel thing. Like if I feel like I'm getting players' results better, if I'm adapting in sessions better, if I'm communicating better, I can kind of tell that. And it's just obviously a constant process.
Yeah, I think the self-awareness, like just the self-awareness piece is huge. And even
Yep,
though you work in the training game and coaching game and we're in the PT game, how you go about things and how we go about things, very similar.
absolutely.
The self-reflection and critically thinking about, all right, how did I communicate this? Did this intervention work? Could I have approached this a different way? How am I going to improve next time? So I think even though it's two totally different worlds, I think just hearing that how you kind of approach it's kind of cool to see how the two worlds kind of intersect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Key, what you got?
You spoke about reflection and you do self-reflection. I watched a video on Instagram and you're giving the kids rules for each session. And at the end, you have them reflect in a notebook.
Yep.
How did you get them to buy into that? And like, how has that been going?
I think it's been going pretty well. I mean, I think some players just naturally don't care about that because they just don't want to get as better as other players do. So like my most serious players, they're all for that. They love it. And I think for a lot of them, like they have some things that they do good and bad each session. Like they'll be emotionally up and down one day, or something will be bothering them, or they'll be missing more shots. So I think like being able to after a session go and reflect on that, and either A, just get it out of their head so they don't spend the whole rest of their day thinking about it. But B, just kind of be like, why was this? Like, why was I so up and down today emotionally? Why was I complaining more than normal? And they can kind of reflect and be like, hey, like, I kind of messed up today. I shouldn't have been doing that. And then I think they can learn a lot quicker through that, because if they're not, like I said, like reflecting, it's really tough for them to get better. If they just come in and show up and go through the motions, you're not going to get better. So I think like the most serious players get it, and the players who really want to get better are bought in, because they'll do anything that can give them a 1% improvement. And then naturally you'll have some players that just don't care, but that's part of it.
I think that reflection forces you to be intentional the next time you're in that session, because you know what you did wrong or right, and you want to improve upon it. So I think that's good, especially for like the younger athletes, because
Exactly.
the psychology of it goes a long way.
Yeah, 100%.
I just think it's hard to get them to buy into it. But once you find a player that really wants to get better, I feel like then they'll like kind of take advantage of it.
Yeah, especially if you're a person who's adamant on it as well. Like if they see like, oh, hey, he does this, or like my coach is doing this, and they get better off it and they utilize this, maybe I should do it too.
Can you kind of talk about some of the culture that you've tried to build in the training facility? I know this is a
Yeah.
big topic that you talked about at PDC, and building how important culture is in your facility. Can you kind of expand on what your culture philosophy is and how you got to that point?
Yep. So it's definitely taken a while, and obviously having your own gym makes it a little easier because you can kind of control who comes and who doesn't. But that's something I'm really adamant on. And for one, it's just like I don't want to train people who have a bad attitude, who B, don't really want to get better. So I want to kind of weed those people out. Like there's a lot of different ways that I do it, but especially with like the high school groups and the college groups, like the older kids, is really just holding everybody accountable. That's A. And B is just like trying to create that family feel. So it's like all my players that I have, I try to get them to kind of not be friends with each other, but to like understand. Like with one of my college groups the other day, like they first came in, I started the workout and I pointed to one of the kids. I said, "Do you know what this guy's name is?" And he's like, "No." I was like, who's this guy? What's his name?" And he's like, "I don't know." I was like, "You guys are all after the same goal. You guys are all in a session together, and you guys didn't introduce yourself to each other." I was like, spend 2 minutes introducing yourself to each other, get to know each other, because A, we're going to be working together all summer, but B, we're all in here after the same exact goal. So I think that's one thing that I try to be adamant on, is like get to know everybody, because we're all in here for the same exact reason. And I want to make sure that everyone who comes in here is in here for the right reasons, and that they bring a good attitude. So I've had to kick people out because they have a bad attitude. I've had to tell people, hey, I don't really want to work with you because you have bad energy. And if that's messing up my energy, that's going to mess up everybody else's. So I have no problem kicking people out if they're being fucking annoying, have a bad attitude. That's part of the reason why I did the no complaining or no bad body language rule, is because when people come in, they're complaining all the time. They have bad body language. They're always throwing their hands up or putting their head down every time they miss a shot. Like that energy throws off everybody else's energy, and that throws off the culture. So A, just like holding everybody accountable. B, just kind of that's how you got to hold people accountable sometimes, is hey, get the fuck out of the gym. So luckily I can kind of control who comes in and who comes out. And then another one is just like my price luckily kind of helps build a culture, because like if I'm really adamant on people paying, not because I need to make the most amount of money, but if you're not willing to pay, you're not the right person for me, because you don't really care enough. Like I invest so much into my craft, you have to do the same. And if you are paying, you're going to care more, and you're going to bring the right attitude. So it's like that's a big thing. Like I've had that conversation with a couple people. Is like, oh, like you should drop your prices sometimes, or like do a free session here and there. I'm like, yes, but oftentimes the people that brings is not the people that I want to work with.
How do you have that conversation with people?
The price or kicking people out?
I was talking about the price, but let's talk about kicking people out too.
I mean, I think from the price, like it's very easy, because I have a gym where I'm like, hey, like I've spent $50,000 just to start this gym up. Like I've invested so much to provide a good environment. I've spent so much money building my knowledge, that you're gonna have to pay for that. Like I've valued myself to become better so I can deliver a better product to you. So that's why you're paying me. And if you don't want to pay me, then you really do not care enough. Because if I was in high school and I really wanted to, I could go work a job. Like a lot of the kids that you see come in who say they A, can't afford it, or B, oh, I just don't have the money, whatever. They don't work a job. They have $250 pair of shoes, and they got Supreme backpack. It's like, dude, that's $1,000 right there. That's a whole summer of workouts. It's like if you really cared, you do have the money, but you really don't care, because if you did, you'd find a way. And then in terms of kicking people out, I only had to do it a few times, but oftentimes they understand. They're like, you're right, I deserve that, and then they come back better. And then the people who are in the session appreciate it because they realize I'm not playing games and that they can't just do whatever they want and not be held accountable. So it really does help everybody, because if someone has a bad attitude and they're constantly getting away with it, it's teaching everybody else that they can get away with it too, and that I'm not going to stand for that. So they're like, I respect you more because you're willing to do that shit and protect the culture, protect the environment, protect the energy.
You spoke about spending $50,000 to open your training facility. What was your journey leading up to that?
So I opened it in 2020. I left college in 2018. So it was like probably 2 years and 3 months between when I left college and then when I opened the gym. And between that time, I've spoke about it on a couple other podcasts, like would not spend $1 on food, would not spend $1 trying to get a water bottle at the fucking grocery store. Like I was just obsessed with like saving every dollar that I can. I'm not like that anymore, because I knew like there's going to be an opportunity and I want to open my own gym and I know I'm going to need this money for something. And I know that I needed to save and do everything that I possibly could. And then I would work basically a full-time job at a golf course. And then I was training part-time. So I was working like 80 hours a week just to try to save up and build that up so that I can do something like this. I didn't know that I was going to get a gym. My original goal was to actually buy a multifamily first before I got the gym, but then COVID happened and then I was like, all right, I have to do this. It's a no-brainer. But really like my journey up to that was just like working extremely hard. Like every Friday, Saturday night, I was in reading books, like studying film, all that kind of shit for 2 years straight. Didn't really hang out with friends, literally just worked and saved my money for 2.5 years straight, like obsessively.
Looking back, would you change any of that process? Would you change
Nah,
anything about that process?
nah, keep it the same.
So 2018 to 2020, can you talk about, I know you've done a YouTube video on this, but can you kind of give listeners a kind of idea of month to month what it costs to maintain and open a gym and kind of the specs of your space, just to give them a
Yeah. So my gym is 3,300 square feet. There's like a 300 square foot office area, which we just turned into a weight room. And then the warehouse is like 3,000 square feet. And then in terms of like the total cost to run it, my lease is going up in August, but at the current moment, it's $3,100 for the lease. Like the electricity is like 250, heat's like 200. Had Wi-Fi in the gym because we had the office in there. I got to pay employees. You got to pay for cleaning. So it's like very easily it'll cost $7,000 like at base bare minimum to run the gym, like adequately. Um, and then like obviously all the other expenses that you're investing into more your knowledge, you're traveling, all that stuff. Like I think like 2 months ago I spent like 10 grand for the month in expenses. So it's like everyone wants to like own a gym and like do all this stuff, but it's like it costs money and you have to be able to make money to do that. And obviously like that's why everyone wants to open their own gym when they first start training. It's like you don't have a clientele to support that. Like you have to be able to make 10,000 just to be at zero. Anything over that, now you have to live off of that as well. So it's like you really have to have a very strong business to be able to support a gym. So it's like even if you get funding, you have to have a business. You have to be able to make money. You have to be good at what you do, or you're not going to have people that want to train with you.
Can you talk about building a clientele to kind of support that type of revenue?
Yeah. So for me, my biggest thing when I was starting was I'm going to take care of every single client that's in front of me and act and pretend like they're the most important client that I have. Because especially at the start, every client that you have is so important. Because if you have 5 clients, one of your clients is providing 20% of your income. So obviously, as you build it, not that they become less important, but you become less dependent. But literally from the start to now, like every single client, you have to see them as their most important client. And then B, it's just A is really just consistency. Like I see a lot of coaches and trainers on social media, whatever, that will be big into training 1 week and then they'll take like 2 weeks off. And it's like you're not going to build a clientele that way. So it's really consistency and just like literally thinking that every client you have is so important, doing whatever you can to provide the most value, continuing to better yourself as a trainer so that you're continuously providing more and more value and you're getting them better. And just really caring about them as people too. I think that's one big thing that being young helps me with, is like I can connect with these players more. So it's like, yes, if you're a great trainer, they'll enjoy training with you a couple sessions, but like if you don't care about them, and it's so cliche because everybody says it, like they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, whatever. It is really true. And that's one thing that I think I tend to be really good at, and I'm trying to always be very conscious of, is just like really get to know your players, know what they're doing off the court, know what they like to do off the court, and then like have conversations about that. Be consistent and just literally focus on the person in front of you.
You spoke about just now. You spoke about being young and being able to relate to the players. On Instagram, you did a video saying how, like, if you were a good basketball player yourself, you're able to relate initially, but that doesn't really translate into being a good trainer. Can you like touch upon that and like give us your
Yeah.
thought process?
Yeah. So yeah, like you said, like I said, like you don't have to be a great player to be a good trainer. And like I said, the only real reason that being a good player helps is because you get respect. Like if a player sees me hoop and they're like, whatever, I can make shots and do all these cool moves, they'll be like, oh, like he knows what he's talking about because he's good. And they get that initial respect, parents especially. They like to know that you played. And it helps because you understand the game, you understand like where the player is coming from, but I don't think you really need to be a good player to do that. But really, like all coaching is, like we've been talking about, is the communication piece, is getting to know your players and understanding what gets them the actual results. So it's like being a good player has nothing to do with how good you communicate, how well you understand skill acquisition science, how well you are communicating, getting to know your players, connecting, and things like that. So it's like it really doesn't have the biggest effect. It helps, but it's not the end all be all.
Can we take it back to like you were talking about investing back into your business and stuff. Now that you've got a steady clientele and have multiple streams of revenue, how are you how are you still like making good financial decisions now that you're making more money? It's not like when you first started. Now you're making a pretty good income. How are you making sure you're making good financial decisions?
I mean, I think the biggest thing, which I try to talk to like a lot of other trainers about, is like trying to set yourself up outside of basketball. So like the last thing that I want to do personally as a basketball trainer is have to be a basketball trainer until I'm 50. Because at that point, I'm probably going to be burnt out. I'm not going to want to do it. So I'm just not going to be as good a trainer because I'm not going to want to be there and I'm going to have to rely on it. So I'm almost going to start to resent it, but really just like try to set yourself up outside of basketball. So it's like, for me, if I can be financially set to the point where I don't even need basketball, I feel like that's when I'll be at a point where I'm the most beneficial, because I'm not relying on training more hours, getting paid more. I can literally just come from a point of I'm helping you because I want to. So I think like, hey, obviously investing is a big thing. Like I'm big into like investing in stocks, crypto, real estate, like all that kind of stuff. Like that's really like what I focus on off the court. But just like, and building the relationships with the clientele that you have is so huge. Like there's so many relationships that I have with parents that's like can be leveraged outside of the hoop. But I think that like the biggest thing really is just like take the money that you're making, obviously invest into your business. That's the easiest way. But then after that, really just invest into other things. Because like basketball is really not going to make anyone rich. And if you want to be rich and you want to be wealthy and you want to be financially free, you got to do it off the court. And then once you do that, you can step onto the court because you want to. And then that's when I feel like people are going to be the most beneficial.
What's your investing philosophy with like crypto stocks? Like what do you interested in? Now I'm kind of curious.
I mean, I think the best investment strategy is like 90% safe and then 10% like highly speculative stuff. I think the biggest thing with investing is you never run out of money. So it's like you can never get taken out of the game. If you get taken out of the game, you're done. AKA like getting bankrupt, losing all your money. But you only really need to be right 1 or 2 times. Like if you're really right on a couple things, like say you invest 100 grand and then like 10,000 of that turns into 1 million and the rest of the fucking 100 grand doesn't really do anything. All you had to be was right once to make 1 million, right? So it's like just, and then obviously time's your best friend as an investor. So it's like expand your time horizon and you'll be pretty much rich for sure. If you try to get rich quick and be rich in a year, chances are slim. But if you expand your time horizon, you utilize compound interest and things like that, you'll be rich for sure.
Do you trade options?
I've been learning that at least recently, yeah.
Okay.
Not great at it yet, but I've been
I just
getting better.
Yeah, it is tough. I just thought of that because you said that like trying to get rich quick. I feel like a lot of people go straight to options without fully learning
Understanding, yeah.
So,
And I think the biggest thing with investing is like A, it's obviously all emotional, but B, it takes experience to learn. Like losing money in investing is your tuition to learn essentially. So it's you have to learn
yeah.
the hard way sometimes, but it's practice and you always want to make sure you're never in a position where you lose it all because then you're out of the game and you can't play.
Would you like recommend getting into investing right now in this market for people?
Yeah, definitely. Now's the time you want to do it. Recessions make millionaires.
Yeah.
So
Everything is on sale. Like a kid in
yeah,
a candy
exactly.
store.
Exactly.
How do you feel about like taking your profits and then out of the stock market and putting it into like another asset, like for example, like real estate? Like, is that something you plan to do?
Yeah, I mean, I try to, like, if I'm investing in stocks, like I would try to keep it in something that I would want to keep it in long term because obviously if you sell and you have profits, you have to pay taxes on that. So it's like I'd rather keep my money, certain money in stocks, have certain money in crypto, and then certain money in real estate. Just because if I'm investing into a stock per se, like that's something that I really believe in the long term. But that's not to say that in 10 years, I'm like, okay, I got what I wanted to get out of it. I'll take it out, invest it into something else like real estate or crypto. But I mean, it just all depends. Like, I think the biggest thing with like investing, really anything, is like invest in what you know. Like, if you're great at stocks, stay with stocks. If you're great at real estate, go all in real estate because that's what you know. And I think that's a lesson that I've learned. And that's kind of what I've heard people talk about is like, you hear a lot of people who are like, oh, crypto, 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 and that's all they do. That's great, but that's all that they know. That's what they know. That's what they focus on. So they should go all in. But then some people might be real estate or whatever. So it's like it really just like invest what you're really interested in and what you know the most about and kind of stick with that. Because if you try to dabble with everything and you don't know what you're doing in that space, you could lose your money. So
Do you see any parallels in between investing like in the stock market and then also trading? Like any philosophies that are like similar?
yeah, I think the biggest thing is like is not being too emotional. Like don't become too emotionally attached to it. So it's like a lot of people in terms of like basketball or training, I guess you could say, is like they become too attached to the result. They become too emotionally up and down when things are happening. Same thing with investing. Like if something goes up, you don't want to get too excited. Something goes down, you don't want to get too frustrated, right? So it's the same thing with basketball and training is like there's going to be ebbs and flows, but you want to keep your emotions as even keeled as you possibly can. Because when there's good times, there's also going to be bad times. You have to remember that. So I think being as emotionally dead inside, I guess you could say, as possible, I think will help.
Kind of transitioning a little bit. Could you talk about your collaboration with Coleman and Master Hoops and like how it started?
Yeah, so how it started is pretty funny. So when I first opened my gym, he hit me up. He was like, "Yo," well, first off, I hit him up like a couple years before that. And he didn't answer me, but that's a whole nother story. And then like a year or two later, he saw that I got the gym, and he was like, "Yo, like we should collab, whatever, do a clinic. Like I love that you got your own gym. I'm trying to do the same thing." So he came down, he did a clinic, and right off the bat, we just kind of connected. We clicked right off of that, like very similar interests. We're both the same age. We're both 23. And we were just like, like we're very much aligned. Let's like try to have a weekly call where every Sunday we're going to talk about what we're doing in the business, training philosophy, all that kind of stuff. And then after about a couple of weeks, we were like, yo, we should just, everything that we're talking about, all the resources that we're sending each other, we should just make that available to other people. And then almost like really we weren't even thinking about like charging and stuff for it. We were just like, yo, like the resources that we use, we can just give to other coaches and make it easier for them. So we're like, you know what, that could probably be like a whole business idea. So we're like, we'll do that. We'll keep putting resources together, and a year from now, we'll like start Mastery Hoops, which we didn't know what the name was gonna be at the time. But and then from there, we were just like a couple weeks later, we we're like, holy shit, like we have a ton of resources already. We have a ton of ideas. Let's just start it. That's kind of me and Coleman's thing, is like we're very quick to do shit, sometimes to our disadvantage because we want to do too much shit. But we were just like, all right, cool. So he flew down. We filmed like 40 videos in a weekend. We put it all together, edited our website together, got all the resources in line, and then we just launched Mastery Hoops. And then that's basically how it started.
That's wild. I like that though. It's like we always talk about like, what is it? Whatever, perfect inaction, like paralysis by analysis. Like if you just get stuck trying to figure out everything, make everything perfect, like you ain't gonna do anything. But y'all just
Exactly.
got the ideas and we're like, all right, we're gonna put it out there. We're gonna make mistakes. We're gonna see it, what hits, what doesn't hit, and we'll just keep improving it as it goes on. And now y'all built this huge platform that continues to grow and evolve. So I just wanted to kind of get some of the behind the scenes look at that. How
Yeah.
PDC, like player PDC, come about?
So we were just talking. We were like on one of our weekly calls, and we were like, what's like the biggest thing that we can do that will benefit like the brand? And then that's just basically what we thought of. We're like, yo, we should just get all the best basketball trainers and just do a conference. So we're like, all right, who are the best basketball trainers? And we just like list them off, and we're like, okay. And then the first one, we were just like, all right, like these guys probably won't answer, they probably won't do it, but we'll reach out anyways. And then all of them said yes. So like we had no idea, because obviously we were like the first ones to really put together something like this. Now they're popping up everywhere, but that's besides the point. But yeah, so we were just like, you know what, like let's just do this. We had no like blueprint to go off of. We had no idea how many people we were gonna get. We already told all these guys how much we were gonna pay them. We had no idea if that's like a fair price to pay them, whatever. We're like, all right, cool, we'll just offer you this. They all said yes. We're like, okay, cool. So we had this amount of money that we had to pay these guys that we committed to, and we had no idea how many signups we were gonna get. And then we put it out. We're like, maybe we'll get 50. If we get 50, we're good. And then we got like 27 like the first day. So we're like, okay, now let's try to hit 100. We hit 100, and then we're like, all right, let's try to get like 150. And we ended up getting like 125 for the first one. But really, like the theme of everything Mastery Hoops is just like have an idea and we just do it. And like we see how it works. We figure it out along the way, and then we adapt, which we've been in business for about a year and like 2 months. And we've learned so much to this point that I think now we're in a good place. We're like, okay, this is how we should do things. And this is how we're going to move forward. But we wouldn't have got to that point, especially as fast. It might have taken us like 3 to 5 years if we did it the normal way people try to appreciate it, how to do it. We would just not have learned that much that fast if we did it the traditional route. So that's kind of like the theme of how we do things. Like I said, sometimes to our disadvantage, but so far it's worked out really well. And I think Mastery Hoops is in a really good place now, and we kind of know the exact trajectory and how we want to continue to move forward.
What is your end goal with Mastery Hoops? Like 10 years from now, what do you want it to look like?
I think our main thing is that we want to be the leading coach and trainer education platform out there. And then we also want to provide opportunities like PDC where people can come and connect and learn from other people and really just be the bridge to the scientific side of training and really, really, really push training to a much higher level. So I think like all of the people that really started like the training industry, say 10, 15 years ago, like the Phil Handy, Gannon Baker, PJF, Drew, like all those guys that really started and they were like the forefront. We really want to be the next people in line to take the training game to a whole nother level, both from a business perspective and from just the quality of training. Because I think a lot of the training that we see from a scientific perspective and an efficiency standpoint is really, really not up to par of what it should be. So we really just want to be able to really just educate coaches to the best of our ability, and then provide as many opportunities off of that to build relationships with other coaches. And then we really want to start like certifying coaches, but that's like more the long-term vision.
What about, I know you talked about you down the line having basketball training because you want to. What
Mhm.
other goals do you have, like 10, 15, 20 down, just for you personally?
I mean, I really just want to be able to be in a position where I just work because I want to, not because I have to. Obviously, the same thing with training. Um, I want to do like a lot of like consulting type stuff. Like I love helping people. Obviously, being in training, I love helping people. So I want to be able to do like consulting like that, help other people build their businesses. Really just be financially free and be able to do whatever the fuck I want to do whenever the fuck I want to do it. Really, it's as simple as it gets.
Me too. I hear that.
Yeah.
I have two questions. I don't know if you have any more, Ming, but what is your top qualities? What do you think are the top qualities of a basketball trainer or trainer in general? And then what are 3 resources that a coach could use to work on those qualities?
hmm I think the first quality is just being open-minded. I think that's really the key to everything is like, and really just asking yourself questions like, why am I doing this? Is this the best way to do it? How can I do it better? If you just simply ask yourself those 3 questions as a trainer constantly, I think you'll continuously learn and get better. Because if you're doing something and you don't ask yourself those questions, you're going to continue to think that that's the best way to do it. And that's how it should always be done. But if you're doing something you're like, how could this be better? Simply asking that question is going to lead to curiosity, and that curiosity is going to lead to learning, finding answers, and then improving on your training. So I think that's number one. And then B is really just like I was saying earlier, really caring about your players and just being really good in terms of building relationships and connecting with your players. I think that's two. Number for the obvious reasons of them buying in, but also just everything that can happen off the court. Like you can really be like I started working with someone recently who's just like really has trouble like mentally being not stable, but like confident, like not too up and down. So it's like for me, building that relationship, getting to know that person, I'm able to help that person on the court, but the help that I can do with them off the court as well and carry over into their life is massive. So it's obviously way bigger than basketball. And then quality number 3, I would say is that's a tough one. I'd say those are number 2, or those are the top 2, and then 3 maybe just like really understand like business and just the way like people work. So like obviously communication's a big thing, but I think like just psychology, understanding the way that humans work, humans think, I think is just a big piece. And then 3 resources, I would just say A, Mastery Hoops, B, books, 3, podcasts. Like if you're curious, you'll find all the resources that you need. But I think Mastery Hoops is the easiest way because anything regarding training wise, communication wise, business wise, we've kind of sifted through the resources over the last 3 to 5 years and we've put them all on the platform. So it makes it super easy. But yeah, like books contain all the knowledge that you need. If you're looking for the answers, you'll probably find them.
I like it. What would you say from this conversation today? 2 to 3 top takeaways that you want listeners to go away with.
It's a tough one. I mean, if you're a coach or trainer, like I said, is be open-minded. Continue to find ways that you can do like what you're doing, how you can do it better. And then the second one is really just communication. Like be really good at communicating, be really good at caring about the people in front of you. And I think if you do that as a trainer, not that the business side will take care of it, but I think it'll be much, much easier.
Yo, Tyler, appreciate you coming on the pod.
Yes, sir.
Glad we were able to make this happen. I just thought we've been talking to a lot of PTs and people in the PT field, but looking over your stuff, being at PDC, I was like, this relates, our worlds kind of intersect. And I was like,
Yeah.
I think being able to bridge that gap between the rehab or performance side and the training side, I think that's the way the world is heading. So I was like,
Yep.
it'd be dope to have a conversation. And if anyone's out in Lowell, Mass, make sure you pull up to TJ.
Sure.
And go work out with Tyler. He talks a lot of shit, but you know he's pretty good. Key, anything else you want to add in?
Just thanks for coming on, Tyler. It was nice talking to you.
Absolutely.
Where can people find you if they have questions or want to ask you anything?
Instagram, TJL Training, or you can hit me on email, tyler@tjltraining.com.
Perfect. All right. Well, appreciate you coming on again, and we'll put all your links, Mastery Hoops, TJL Training, all that in the show notes. And well, appreciate you coming on, and hope to see you all in the next episode.
Yes, sir.